Welcome to another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com Deep Dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. On this week's show, we get into the business of sprint car engines with Adam Cofer, the new owner of Ott Racing Engines in central Pennsylvania. Before we get to Adam, don't forget to check out EnTrust IT Solutions. EnTrust IT Solutions is a full-service technology company serving small and mid-sized businesses in the York, Pennsylvania, and surrounding areas. The staff at EnTrust takes a personalized approach to technology. See why customers are choosing EnTrust IT Solutions as their technology partner by scheduling a free consultation at www.entrust-msp.com or calling 717-292-8868. Hello, Adam. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, it's kind of interesting. I've never talked to an engine builder before. You guys are kind of obscure. And to most people, you guys are like the Death Star, like Brian Carter with the World of Outlaws. So I want to kind of clear that up, that you guys are not the evil empire.
Yeah, like I say, we get that vibe from some people. Like, I don't know. I think it's just funny that with different types of racing, kind of the different way engine builders get treated. And, I think a lot of it is, that it is a significant cost for a lot of these racers. And I'm sure that's part of it. But, like I say, we're out here giving it our all. And,
So you're from the Midwest. Where are you
yeah.
from? And how did you end up in Pennsylvania and get in the sprint car engine game?
So I kind of have a little bit of a longer backstory, but I'm originally from Kansas, small town farm boy, and got hooked up with some guys that started racing 305 sprint cars. Kind of decided that I wanted to be involved in the engine side of things, and went to work for a company out there called Myers Engine, and worked for them while I was in high school. Then I went to school for racing engine building, Sam Tech out of Houston, Texas, and went through my stint there. From there, I spent a little bit of time in North Carolina. I worked for MBE cylinder heads, manifolds, and that was along about 2009. So it was right after the economy had collapsed, and it was just a bad time to be in Charlotte. Everything was, for every job I went to, there was 10 people standing in line. And truthfully, the reason I moved out there, I wanted to go to work on the Roush Yates sprint car program. I no more got out there and learned that I got in with the right people at Roush Yates, and I learned that program was on a chopping block, that it wasn't going to be around in another year. And so from that point, I actually had thought about coming up to central Pennsylvania at that time, but it was a big move for me just to attempt to go to North Carolina. And I knew it was going to be safe for me if I went back home, and Myers had offered me a job there. So I went back and worked for Myers for, I think it was 6 years. From there, a company called Salina Engine, which had been pretty prominent in the ASCS world for a lot of years. They had shut down. The gentleman that owned that asked me to come in and get it back going for him again. So I was there for 4 years, and truthfully, I'd always kind of had central Pennsylvania on my radar, but the last thing that really pushed me over the edge was I was at Knoxville one night, and I was just looking at all the 410s, and even in Knoxville, almost every one of them came from central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I made the decision that I wanted to be in central Pennsylvania. And truthfully, I wouldn't be here at all if it hadn't been for my wife. She was the one that ultimately said, let's do it, let's go. And so her and I packed up and moved out here. And I guess jumping back just a little bit, Don Ott had found out that I was thinking about moving out here. And so Don called me at the shop one day and offered me a job, and kind of laid out what ended up being what got me in the position that I am right now.
So you've been at Ott for how many years?
I came here in July of 21, and Don brought me in with the intention on, he's been doing this since 1990.
Yeah.
And he just said, I'm wanting to start stepping away and be able to do some more things on my own, the things that I want to do, because this has been my whole life for all these years. So he brought me in with the intention on having me take over the business when the time came, and that time has come. So just this past November, my wife and I took ownership of the business, and Don's still here working 3 days a week. But it's given him the freedom to go spend some time up at his cabin and do some traveling and different things that he's always wanted to do, but not had the time to do, being he was here running the business.
So now you're the owner of Don Ott Engines. Don's still there. What's it been like working next to Don Ott, who, I mean, countless wins in the sprint car community, just a legend, a legendary, engine builder. What's that experience been like, and how much have you learned?
Well, that's just it. Is like I've learned so much more just being around him and having him as a mentor, and just things that he notices that the at the end of the day, you can't beat experience in this industry. I like to think that I'm a pretty hard worker and a pretty fast learner, but at the end of the day, experience is a major thing. And so having him in my corner to be able to say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" or "Does this work?" or so on and so forth, it's been a tremendous asset. And like I say, it's not that he doesn't want to do this anymore, because he does. It's just he wanted the ability to go do other things and not have to be so involved in the day to day stuff. And what I kind of the way I worded it is, Don was looking to step down and I was looking to step up. And so it just happened to work out at that time.
What do you think of Central Pennsylvania? I mean, you've been around for a while now. Obviously, 2010, you and I were talking earlier today. So you kind of know your way around the sprint car scene. And now you're in Central Pennsylvania, a place where, quite honestly, it's the biggest hotbed in the country. You go Outlaws, and of course, you have All Stars now, High Limit, but then it's Central Pennsylvania. What's it like being here on this scene?
Well, the biggest thing to me, and it's just a godsend for what I want to do, is we just race so much. And you know, let's take Knoxville for instance. I don't think they even got 16 shows in last year. It's nothing out here to get 60 or 80 shows in. And so for for me, and I think this is the biggest part of what I said earlier, where I noticed so many of the engines do come out of central Pennsylvania. We have so much more of an opportunity to experiment and do R&D and learn what works and what doesn't work. And then the second part of that is we have a nice variety of tracks. We've got Lincoln, which is kind of more of a what I would consider to be a short track. We've got Williams Grove, which is it's a big racetrack, but truthfully, you have to treat an engine a little bit more like a short track package for there. We've got Port Royal, which lets us work on our muffler program, and then the track's big, but it's slick, so it gives you a different aspect on how you need to build motors there. And then with Selinsgrove being just the monster racetrack that it is, so it gives you an opportunity to learn what combinations work well where. And then the second part of it is, with this business being what it is, we have so many different clients that I can kind of learn what works for different guys and different driving styles, which to me at the end of the day is one of our biggest challenges, is because certain drivers want a certain feel, and you have to kind of learn and tailor each package to each customer. So we have guys that want to run motors that beat the wall down, and then we have other guys that want to be where the motor's slowing them down as they go into the corner, so it sets the car and makes the car go through the corner for them. So you just kind of have to learn to tailor it to each driving style. But that is one thing. That's the biggest thing to me about Central Pennsylvania, is just the amount of racing that we have here, and the amount of just how much you get to learn from that.
No, you have to have a notebook like a driver on each driver. So that's kind of interesting. So let's get into it. Fans, we talk about motors. Uh, we, it's kind of funny. I've been around forever, like 1984.
Okay.
So it just shows I'm old.
Yeah, I'm not quite there yet.
That's actually good for this industry, which we'll get to in a bit. But, we didn't hear much about cost of motors. And then there was a stretch in the 2000s where we did. And then we got to the $35,000 plateau, and it was, oh, the sky's falling. And now we're to this 65, 70,000 threshold. And the nice thing for you is tires have gone up. So you kind of been able to fly under the radar a little bit, but um, motor cost. It's a biggest cost for a team. What has made the motors go up so much over the years? And I would say probably even from pre-COVID to post-COVID.
Well, so I'm gonna post it to you this way. First off, so the biggest thing that from our stance, and this is Don and I had a conversation earlier today about this. The biggest thing is the format makes it where we have to have an engine that is just a hitter and is a good qualifying engine. So you can't do it with something subpar. So that's been the biggest thing over the years is the format has made it where we have to give the customer and the client as much as we can for strictly for qualifying. So that's been the first part of it. It's added the cost to it, and that's been since the beginning of time, or since they went to the format where the fast cars start up front. When there was an invert, you know, you could be the guy that started at the front with the invert and have a lower budget motor and win the race potentially. When they put the fast car on the front row and the fast car is there because he has a good engine or a good qualifying program or what have you, it inherently makes that part of it cost more. But post COVID, the biggest thing that I've seen, and it's not just this industry, it's everything. Everything's gotten more expensive. You know, just look at going out to eat or something like that. I remember it wasn't nothing if you can go out and have a decent dinner for $20. Well, now that same decent meal is 35 or $40. So everything's gone up across the board. Parts wise, I don't know if anything specifically went up because of COVID, but I know from some billet pieces that we have made, the cost of aluminum has significantly gone up. So just the raw materials and everything's gone up. So I can't pin it to any one thing, but everything has increased. So there is a point that I want to make to that end, though. And I've read some of the arguments that come up on Facebook and things like that. And I tend to be the type, I don't try and chime in on too much of that stuff just because I feel like I'm arguing with someone that doesn't want to, they've already got their mind made up on what side of the street they're on. So I don't try and argue, and at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. It is what it is. But what I want to pose, and I asked around to some engine builders today that have been doing this since the 90s and kind of tried to get a feel for what the motors would have cost in the early 90s. And kind of the general consensus was it was anywhere between 20,000 and 35,000 in 1990. So here's what I did. I looked up what a Chevy Silverado half ton was in 1990, and what I found was $14,600. That same Silverado today, the half ton, I didn't look at a diesel because that's obviously going to make it more expensive.
Right.
But a regular half ton gas Chevy pickup is 55 to 60,000. So we've gone on the same trend those things have. It's just the nature of the way things are. Everything's gotten more expensive, and you know we're in line as far as I'm concerned with the cost of a vehicle. It's gone up proportionally to what that has.
I would say you're even on the lower end of that. If that's going up 40,000, you know, you're kind of, yeah, I mean, you're right there. So that's actually very interesting. Time is also a big thing. I did a story today on Don Kreitz Jr., his team. You know, it takes so long to get new motors. It takes long to get motors back and for a refurbish, or if there's a crack or something went wrong with it. What has been the biggest challenge as far as this timeline that's made it go from, you know, whatever it was, a few weeks or whatever it was, to now you're almost waiting a year, depending what's wrong with it. And to get a new one, you're about 12 to 15 months out.
Well, and I can say whether it's just our workload or what, we are actually getting new motors out sooner than that. But
Okay.
we have kind of a system in place that so far has been working very well for us. But The biggest thing was, I'm going to jump back to kind of the pre-post COVID thing. Don said he had to kind of change his business model. It used to be you pick up the phone, you can call and order a set of pistons, and you had them in a week. Well, now that same part takes 4 to 6 weeks. So it just changed the way that he had to structure the business, where he went from carrying a small amount of inventory to having to carry a very large amount of inventory just to be able to do a reasonable turnaround on stuff. So that's one thing that has changed. Now, we have tried to make it to where we have kind of some set engine packages, which most of the larger engine builders, the big names, do have kind of the same sort of structure, where we keep parts around for that package. So like a freshen on one of our newer motors, normally we can literally turn one of those around in less than 2 weeks, and a lot of times it's only a week. If you drop it off on a Friday, you'll have it back not the following Friday, but the following Monday. So you may miss 2 weekends of racing, but a lot of times during the summer we can get it back to you in one weekend. Now that's just a standard freshman where nothing goes wrong. If something does go wrong, it kind of depends on what parts got hurt, how long it does take to get it fixed.
So obviously, would you say you guys have maybe an advantage over a guy who, let's say a Charlie Garrett or a Morrison or somebody like that, who maybe they have exclusive deals?
As far as getting stuff turned around?
Yes.
I'm going to say yes, but it's not so much for, I think they may have a little bit tighter and a little bit more attention to detail on stuff. Just, it's one guy start to finish at a Garrett or Morrison, or a, Capetta. It's one guy start to finish looking at everything all the way through. Now, the thing that I will say is our advantage is the team that we have in place. So we have a very good team here. It starts at the top with Don and works its way down through every guy that I have here. But everybody knows their job and is very efficient in what we do. And it's no big deal for us to be able to crank out multiple engines a week. And, if one comes in hurt on Monday, my tear down and inspection guy knows exactly where he needs to go with it. The guy that does our parts cleaning and organizing and inspections, he knows where he needs to be. So like, that's our advantage, is it's the team that we have in place here and the ability or the position that puts us in to be able to get projects and jobs out faster.
How difficult is it tailor making an engine to different teams? And I like Fred Raymer's been with you guys forever. It's not going anywhere. And there's some other teams too as well. How difficult is it managing these engines between what guys want, guys who are on the throttle hard to guys who feather the throttle? Is it difficult? And also, is it difficult too when a guy has motors from different manufacturers and he's looking for certain things?
Yeah, it is difficult because we went through a stint with one of our customers where they just weren't satisfied with what they were getting from us, and finally we gave in and just said, listen, this is what he says he wants. So it's not our normal combination. So we started moving in that direction, and lo and behold, they start qualifying better, they start finishing better, and they are happier with the program in general. So, some of it is we have to kind of put our pride off to the side and say, just take a objective look at it and say, this is what this person's asking for. This is the way we need to do it, irregardless of if we think that's right, wrong, or indifferent. So that is a challenge that you have to tailor them to each one. It can be difficult when you're working with a new customer, figuring out exactly where they want to be. But a lot of the higher level guys, you have an idea of what their driving style's like, so you tailor it to them. But like I say, it is difficult to do that. But yeah, like I say, you just kind of got to learn what the specific drivers are wanting, and if you hear them, you got to listen to the clients. If they tell you that this is what they're feeling, we have a plan in place on how to maneuver that and make it where they want it to be it a different camshaft or if they need a completely different combination.
Do you go to the track? a lot with a customer, or I mean, because you're around it all week, you take all the phone calls, you deal with customers, so on and so forth. Do you go to the track on the weekends?
Yeah. So I live about 5 minutes from Lincoln Speedway, so it's easy for me to go to Lincoln. I spend a lot of time there, and I don't go to Williams Grove every week, but I'm there fairly often. I would say at least every other week. Port Royal, I try and go up there at least once a month, but it's very important, and I tell all of our clients or anybody that calls me here wanting to get an idea about getting motors from us, like I think at this level, all of us engine builders do very similar work. We all have every one of us has our own little different things we do, but we all have a good combination. So the biggest thing at that point is it's a relationship, how comfortable you are with the guy you're working with. So part of that on my end is spending time with him at the racetrack or making myself available. Like I didn't go down to Florida, but was fielding phone calls from guys that were down there on different tuning things that they need to do. And with the cell phones nowadays, where they can send pictures of spark plugs or different things, you can kind of help tune from afar. So, but yeah, I've learned that long ago that the track support is a big deal. Spending FaceTime with these guys, I've had guys out here even tell me that even though I don't necessarily go into their trailer and try and tune their motor for them that night, but I just stop by and say hi. Like that's a big deal to people. It's just, I don't know, so much shows that you care or what it is, but it's just the fact that you're there and that you're trying to spend some FaceTime with them.
You give people your phone number. Oh no, let me guess. It's going off all the time.
Yeah, like I say, it's just part of it though. And like for us, the thing that we have a lot of business in California and on the West
Ooh,
Coast. So
yeah.
those are the phone calls. Like I know I try and keep tabs on who's racing where out there. So that way I know if my phone goes off, I know, hey, this guy's at the racetrack. I need to take this call. And, I tell people if I hear it ring, I'll answer it. I may get old and bitter someday and quit doing that. But at this point, it's just part of it. You have to be there for these guys because normally it's something simple, but um, you know, it puts their mind at ease and you can help them work through a problem.
Well, I won't call you at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night then. But uh, everybody talks about the racing now. I think everybody wants it to be 1985, where you have a big gap between the haves and the have-nots. Then guys come from 18th because you have a bunch of haves, and then you don't have, at the front of the field, you have have-nots. But that being said, I hear fans talk about, oh, we should go back to spec engines and and whatnot. What do you say to that? As far as a spec 410 motor, is that even feasible? And gee, wouldn't the cost be a lot to switch everybody over?
I'm not a big proponent for spec engines, anyways. Like, they help to an extent, but I guess the first thing. So, I tell this story a lot. I'll jump back to kind of my origin again. Out there, they run a lot of what they call IMCA modifieds,
Yep.
which are an 8-inch tire. It's a really hard like plastic tire. Well, when I first started building engines, we did quite a few of those, and everybody wanted as big a motor as you can get them because there were some rules, but they didn't put you in a real tight box. So, we were building some fairly aggressive big cubic inch motors. Well, they came around and decided they were going to do a crate engine for their upper level class.
Mm-hmm.
And what was odd at that time, so we went from they took 150 horsepower out of the motors, and the guys weren't going any faster or any slower because of it. Now they did add a spoiler rule to them also at that same time, but so they cut the cost of the motor in half, if not more than that. But what I can tell you firsthand from being there and living through it, the car counts didn't change. There was still the same number of cars, regardless if they cut the cost of the motor. What they did start spending more money on was chassis components, carburetors, whatever they could bolt on. And everybody had fancy trailers. So I don't see that cutting the cost of the motor makes much difference. These guys are going to spend as much as they can, irregardless. To the spec engine, I just don't see that it helps anything. So, look at, like I said, I spent some time in Charlotte and around the NASCAR stuff, and they pretty well go on spec engine on all of the Busch series or whatever they call it nowadays. I still call it Busch series. So, but I don't know that it's really saved or helped anything. It makes your R&D get much more intensive. So the cost ends up getting ate up in the R&D. Trying to have just one person do it would be I guess the only way that I could see to keep it on an even plane. And if you did that, I don't see how any one shop could keep up with the entire sprint car industry. It's not like GM with the modified crate engines. It's not like GM is going to come in and be able to produce something. I could be wrong, but it's not that. I don't think that that's on the table. So,
do we need to just face facts that teams are going to spend money no matter what, and that's it? And if you cut one place, they're going to spend it someplace else.
Yeah, like I said, it's that I think this is funny. I had an engine package at Salina where I was trying to really knock the cost of it was an ASCS 360 down, but this would have been 2016. I had an ASCS 360 engine, brand new, out the door for $30,000, and they didn't sell. Everybody assumed for $30,000, there's no way that's a good engine. I guarantee you, if I'd have made the price tag 60 or 65,000, I'd have sold just as many as the $30,000 ones. Just people assume because it cost more money, it ran better. So I don't know that it matters. These teams are all looking for an advantage, and sometimes some of them think because it costs more, it must be better. That's not everybody's mentality, but there is, I think, some of that out there especially with the higher end teams.
Do you think? Look, tires changed recently, and I don't know if you're in those discussions or not, but as an engine builder, a prominent engine builder, Don Ott engines Ott engines are used big portion of central Pennsylvania and throughout the sprint car community. Would you be open to sitting down with, say, tire manufacturers and all the other components to find a package, or maybe what would work to make quote unquote passing better, which I don't think it's that bad as people say, but is that something you could ever see happening or you'd be open to?
The problem is, I don't know from our end, I don't know what we would do to help the situation. Like, Don and I had this conversation also, like the cars have gotten to be so aero dependent that it's just a big aerodynamic problem because of the wings that we run. And like you can see it at Williams Grove. Like Dirt Vision doesn't do it justice. When you're standing there and you see a guy come up behind another guy and it starts taking the air off the front of the car, like you can see the way that the draft affects the dirty air, affects the car behind them. So I don't know what the answer is on that. As far as trying to get with the chassis guys or the wing guys or the rule makers, I don't know how. I don't know what input I would give them that would be helpful. I don't think anything that I would tell them would improve the racing at all.
Now, they just brought out this wicker bill deal where they go into the 1-inch wicker bill. Had guys shown concern with, maybe because obviously it's supposed to, make spit, you're not supposed to get as much grip, so on and so forth. Do guys want you to detune motors now? Has that even been discussed, or have people asked you how the 1-inch wicker bill is going to affect things?
No, I haven't specifically had to deal with it on the wicker bill thing. The only comments or feedback I've gotten from any customers about the wicker bill thing is they're just going to start running their wing at a steeper angle. So
Yeah.
they're going to offset it with that. But, the detuning thing is a big deal. And it, from my side of the fence, it makes it hard to understand sometimes why these guys want all this power, because I've seen it firsthand where we take timing out of a motor or change the nozzles or do this or do that to detune, and the guys get faster. And so the detuning thing, it really makes me wonder if at times we don't have significantly more power than we need. But on the flip side of that, you normally do see the higher horsepower stuff does qualify better, but normally the guys running the higher horsepower stuff have a better all-around combination. They've got the race car figured out. The team has a good driver. They got a mechanic that knows how to adjust the car for the different track conditions. So, it's all about putting your combination together. So, I'm seen it down in Florida. One of our drivers was in the top 3 in qualifying at Volusia every night. So I know, and that was with the engine that isn't necessarily his favorite. So I know they can do it with about any combination. So it's just a matter of you have to have the rest of the pieces in place too.
It really is a balancing act between that qualifying and race conditions, because guys do something different for qualifying to time well, and then you got a race and the track slicks off. And man, I don't know how you as an engine builder can get these guys in a window to where they can make these drastic changes between qualifying and racing.
Actually, the biggest thing, especially at racetracks I go to a lot, I can kind of tell by the lap times what level of detuning they need to be at. So it's easier for me at Lincoln just to based off, from if we're at this time during qualifying and then the lap time slow down to X number, I have kind of a first step that I recommend guys go to, and then so on and so forth. But it comes back to the driver though. So one of our clients runs what everyone in the country would consider to be a big track motor everywhere he goes and runs extremely well with it. If I tried giving that same combination to one of the winningest drivers in the country last year, it just wouldn't work for his program. So there again, it goes back to what we initially talked about, fitting the combination to the driver.
Going to shift gears a little bit. The industry. Look, time moves on. Okay, we all know this. You're not winning that battle. No. Kistler, Don, and Charlie Garrett, who I know you know well, and Shaver. These guys are getting older. They've been around a long time. Are you concerned? Now you're a young guy. I don't even know how old you are.
I'm a couple weeks away from being 34.
Oh, see, Ott Racing Engines is sitting good.
Yeah.
Do you worry in this industry with guys eventually getting out and maybe no succession plan, kind of where the sprint car engine industry is going to be in, say, 5, 6, 7 years?
So yes and no. We'll just pivot when that time comes. Like let's say one of our vendors goes out of business because they retire or pass away or whatever. It seems like there's always an alternative. So, if we can't get part A, we start getting part B. Now that may slow down some of the productivity, just because that one vendor gets overwhelmed. But so there's that. The second thing of it is it seems like this topic's just been getting beat to death lately, and I don't know why. And it's not just in sprint car racing. It's about, because I'm an engine guy. Like, truthfully, I'm not as much into racing as I am into motors. I really like engines. So it just happens to be sprint car engines and sprint car racing are the type that I enjoy the most. But I see this from other facets of the engine building industry. Like the concern over the next generation. I believe the next generation's there. It's just they haven't had the opportunity to step up or been in a position to do it because, for us to take the steps that we did on taking over this business from Don and Leanne and stuff, it's an expensive thing to do. But there's that aspect of it that makes it difficult for a lot of people to take that step. But I fully believe that the people are out there just from that Sam Tech school that I went to. Like, I have countless friends that went through there that are, working for different shops and different engine builders that, like, they're out there. It's just, it's not, they don't have the name that the Kisslers and the Shavers and all these guys that are established. And truthfully, I can think of some other guys that tried to start their own shop that are around the same age as me that they struggled just because they didn't have that name and that reputation. And I kind of cheated a little bit because Don presented this opportunity to me, but he kind of let me jump the line where I did have to build my reputation and, build a rapport with all these customers and clients, but I was able to jump the line a little bit for that, where I didn't have to start from square one and build it. So, but I think you'd be surprised. Like, Stanton's went through the same thing. Gary's, as far as I know, still involved with the business, but he turned it over, sold it to his right-hand man. I'm not exactly sure, but I think kind of the same sort of thing is going to happen at Kistler. From my understanding, there's a plan in place like that at Speedway. Charlie Fisher has his boy who's, he's a bit older than me, but not a lot. So, like, I think there's people there that are going to step up. It's just, it may not necessarily be the guy that started the business or family or what have you.
I think Michael Newman coming along too, because he hooked up with Shark Racing. And now that's a name. I mean, in a story I wrote today, Don Kreitz Jr. got one from his team from Michael Newman. I think that's a perfect example of what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah. Like I say, there's guys out there that I think will step up and carry the flag. It's just, it may not be the names that we think of. And, like, Don had made a comment to me. I don't remember what subject we were on, but, like Tim up at HP, he said, I never expected, or it's not that he ever expected, but he said it was surprising that Tim built that business and what he did, because he just wasn't thinking or considering that was going to be the next guy. And so, there's guys out there in different facets. There may be a late model engine builder comes along as the next big sprint car guy. It's just, that part of my program and why I'm here where I'm at is it was apparent to me that you needed to be in central Pennsylvania if you wanted to get that leg up and, just the volume and have the opportunity to get involved with, to be a big 410 guy. So
what do you think about Ford and Toyota coming into this deal? What are your thoughts on all that, if you can say?
Yeah. So I'm kind of indifferent to it. The biggest thing with that, Mopar did this in the 2000s or 90s or whenever it was. So it's not the first time this has happened. So I'm not overly concerned about it. I could be famous last words, but the second part of that is they're working with established engine builders as it is. Ford's got their program with Shaver, and then TRD has their stuff going on with Ryder and Speedway. So they're working with established engine builders as it is. So I'm inclined to believe that they probably won't try and take on their own full-blown engine program. TRD might, I don't know, but at the end of the day with those guys, I'm not sure what they're getting out of it, though. That's something I'm curious of. Like, are they selling more cars on Monday because of being involved in this? Or like, I don't see the return on investment is something that makes me question if they're really in it for the long haul. And I don't mean anything bad to any of those guys, because I do. I just, at the end of the day, this is a business, and so it has to be justifiable, the amount of money that you're getting spent into it. So.
No, I would agree with you. I don't think you're selling a Toyota truck because something's in a sprint car on Friday night at Williams Grove, but stranger things have happened. So, exclusive deals. This seems to be something that has come up more and more. I've seen it over the years, but now, Donnie has, the shaver deal. You have, Brad Sweet, Capetta, Brian Brown has Garrett, Macri has Garrett. Now Macri has a few others as well. I guess Morrison has Gravel and Selzy. Do you see this as something that's going to expand? We're going to see this more and more and more.
Just take a step back, like base this off of, let's say, the NASCAR stuff. So it is somewhat similar to the progression that they had gone through. In the early 90s, there were quite a few different smaller engine builders in the Charlotte and in the North Carolina area that did motors for Cup cars. And then progressively, all the big teams brought their engine programs in house. So, I think a lot of it is the bigger teams trying to do the same sort of things that the NASCAR teams did. So there is a possibility for more and more of that to happen. And if you're an upper echelon team, it does to an extent make sense to do that, because jumping back to trying to learn about each driver and what they want, you have one guy that knows exactly what you want. He's focused on your program. So there's no confusion on, well, I think we should do this for this guy because I think this is what he wants. The guy running the engine program knows exactly what the driver wants. So
if that would happen, that could be bad for somebody coming in, because where are they going to go? Ott Racing Engines, obviously, but could that be a problem down the road if engine builders go, hey, you know what? I got so much business. I don't want to hire 10 other guys or whatever it is for overhead. You're a bit, it's like you said, it is a business. Mm-hmm. Could that be a problem if guys are coming in, can't get motors because nobody knows them? Nobody's going to take them on. It's somebody new. Is that something that we could see maybe?
I could see it potentially hurting some of the smaller teams, because truthfully, I think a little bit of that's already going on. Guys are more reluctant to sell engines and get new ones right now, because they don't know how long they're going to be waiting on a new one, or if they do hurt an engine, that they'll be out of commission for a while. So there's already some of that going on, but I'm not sure. Like, if you look, going back to the Mopar thing, there's a lot of Mopars floating around. So even still to this day, so like eventually they'll trickle down. It's just, I don't know if it'll create a backlog or not, where a lot of these teams can't get engines or not.
Do you ever see Ott Racing Engines saying, look, we're just going to take on 5 guys?
The biggest thing for us is going back to the team I have. I don't want any of my guys to be out of work over something like that. So if someone were to come in and want us to run their engine program for them, it's going to be a relatively astronomical number, just because I want to keep my guys at the quality of living and pay and everything that they're at now. Right. I don't want to cut their hours or have to do anything like that. So that would be the biggest thing if somebody came in and tried to do something like that with us. But at this point, I don't foresee it, just because we're so diversified. We have so many 360 customers across the country, and the 410 programs too. So we just have too much volume. I don't see that happening at this time. When I do get older, I may consider it, or I may do some sort of exclusive deal with somebody, but at this point, I don't see it happening.
If I say, okay, Adam, how many clients do you have across, how many Ott Engines clients do you have? How many is it? Do you even know?
I don't know an exact number on the number of clients we have. We've been progressively getting bigger every year that I've been here. So right now we're sitting around the 150 refresh and new build a year mark. So, and I know for a fact we're not the biggest one out there. So I'm not even sure if we're top four or top three, excuse me. But so I know we're at that number. I try and keep track of wins and kind of when guys keep me filled in. And I think last year we were somewhere around 130 or 140 wins. So across the United States. So it's something I started doing a couple years ago. I thought, someday like the deal with Davey Brown, where they always talk about how many wins he has. I thought, well, it'd be interesting someday to be able to look back and kind of have the same sort of thing. How many wins engines that I built or worked on had won.
You've actually given me a task, maybe for this year, chart 410 engine wins.
Yeah, I try and keep tabs on that, honestly. Like, I especially like Knoxville Nationals. I try and keep tabs on what engines are in what cars. So it's like I said earlier, I'm less into the racing than I am into the engines and engine builders. These guys are all my heroes, and like I say, I have a Speedway engine development T-shirt in my closet at home. Like, I like engines, and I especially like sprint car engines. So I look up to all these guys, and we all kind of work together and try and help each other too. Like, there aren't too many of these other engine builders that I would be afraid to give a call to and say, hey, we're having this problem. And for the most part, we all kind of help each other out. So, we're a group that we don't want to see each other fail. Like, we may want to beat that guy, but we don't want to see you fail and lose the business over something that could have been resolved.
Ryan Hand, who's my podcast co-host, was telling me a little bit about you, and he said a lot of guys know you. I mean, you guys talk. It is a fraternity. It's not this, I'm taking your business type of thing. You guys are kind of all in it to make the ecosystem better.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah, and that's just it. Like I say, is if I just called Rob Capetta the other day to ask him about some water system stuff. So there's things like that we all do, that we try and help each other out. And it goes back to the experience thing that I talked about with Don. Like, I rely on guys like Rob Capetta. It's been a long while since I called him, but I used to call Charlie Fisher fairly often. Like, these guys, they're all helpful. And that the first time I ever talked to Don was because Don, whoever, we have a different style oil pan that we run on our engines, and one of them came into Salina engine, and I wanted to make sure that I was putting it back together right. So called here, left a message, and the next day Don called me back and kind of helped me out on what I needed to do to put it together. That was one of his engines that he lost to me, but he helped me out on what I needed to know to get it back together and not have a problem.
That's interesting. Last thing, and I'll get you out of here. And again, I appreciate you being on. State of sprint car racing. Do you think it's healthy at this point? And from what you're seeing, because you see the money flow. Okay, you're in the industry. Are we in a good spot?
410 racing, I think, is especially in a good spot. Like, there's so much interest with the high limit stuff going on. And, if I was somebody that had a team, that I would be looking at trying to run the outlaw deal this year. It's a little late now for the season already started, but like, right, this would be the year to do it if you were one of those teams that you thought you could make the full tour and stuff. But there's just a significant amount of interest in the 410 stuff right now. The 410 stuff is in a really good spot. The 360 deal, I'm not sure where that stands, especially like here in Pennsylvania and in through the Midwest. It's struggling a little bit. The problem being is it kind of outlived its purpose. The costs on that aren't much less than a 410. You have a little bit better cost per cycle as far as the engines don't need to be refreshed quite as often, but the cost of a new one is basically the same as a 410. So there's not a lot of sense in running that. And the 305 deal seems to be growing. But yeah, you get to the West Coast, and there's a lot of 360 stuff out there, so it's thriving on the West Coast. But in through the Midwest, and through here, the 360 deals, it's just kind of, I'm not sure what the answer is. It's just kind of struggling, but in general, like I say, we keep selling more and more motors a year. You know, I think it's in a good spot. I'm not at all concerned. What is a concern to me is the racetracks that we've been losing. You know, I don't see, for every one racetrack we lose, there's no way we're ever going to get another one back to replace it. It's just, it wouldn't make sense to try and build a racetrack. So that is one of my biggest concerns, is we're going to lose all the places to race. Like, I question, even out here in central Pennsylvania, that there's not more complaints. You know, like, you don't have to drive very far from Williams Grove and you're in a housing development.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Lincoln, they're building houses all around it. So that's my concern, is at the end of the day, a lot of those people, they end up winning out on their complaints, and it doesn't end well for the racetracks.
You don't have a racetrack, you don't need a car, and the car doesn't need the engine.
Exactly.
So I can understand that. Adam, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It's very enlightening. You know, maybe people won't think you're Darth Vader now. Maybe you can put the black cloak away a little bit.
No, I always kind of try and fly under the radar. Like, you know, you can walk through the pits at the races, and most of the fans and other people there, they don't know who you are. Or if you're, you know, Brad Sweet or Freddie Raymer or somebody like that walking by, they point and know who you are. As an engine builder, you can kind of fly under the radar. But now, me on the flip side, like I say, where I like engines and like engine builders, like, I can pretty well point out everybody, because that's what I like and what I enjoy. So,
well, it's interesting, and that's kind of why I wanted to have you on. I don't think anybody even knew that you were at Ott Racing Engines, or that you bought Ott Racing Engines, and I actually learned some stuff today. So, and I thought the qualifying thing was very interesting. You know, I never really thought of that. So, yep. Even as an old curmudgeon, as Justin Fiedler likes to call me, you know, I learned something. So, Adam, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
That wraps up another edition of the SprintCarUnlimited.com deep dive presented by EnTrust IT Solutions. Thanks again to Adam Cofer of Ott Racing Engines for joining us on the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Check out our exclusive daily content at www.sprintcarunlimited.com. And we'll be back next Thursday. Stay tuned.